idea that punishment is what rehabilitates him isn't very true. I think what rehabilitates the victim is to know that the person has accepted what they've done wrong and has agreed to change and will make reparation, some kind of restorative action, not being locked away necessarily. And I think in this country we have something called restorative justice, which is where a victim and offender meet face. And they'll only happen if the offender is willing and able to apologise. And the victim gets huge satisfaction from it because they hear what happened, they're able to express their own pain. And
even probably for the perpetrator, it's a form of, you know?
Definitely. And hard. I've heard prisoners, because we do some work in prisons, I've heard prisoners say, harder than serving my sentence was meeting my victim. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
Yeah. But in terms of, there's been a lot of research done on this, and it has shown between 15 and 27% decrease in recidivism, which means less people going to back into prison, involving, which is huge. Nothing else has shown that much. And for victims, it shows 80% satisfaction. And normally, the criminal justice system, as it is about 15% satisfaction.
Wow.
So it's well researched and highly effective, but it doesn't really involve forgiveness in the sense that forgiveness may well be an outcome, and actually often is. We have many restorative justice stories, but it should never be an obligation because it's just about the other actually.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be expected either.
Do you mentioned that earlier as well as this kind of this the word forgiveness maybe to some people is quite a strong assumption about what is expected of me, or there's maybe guilt involved in that as well. I have to forgive but what do you think is useful in the kind of broaching of an everyday conversation around forgiveness when you're trying to balance this anxiety people might have about what is expected of them in terms of the forgiver, you know? What have you learned about how you kind of broach the topic?
It's such an interesting one because it sounds really weird, but in some ways I almost say leave the word out of it, which is bizarre. Yeah. And I think that's because it's burdened with piety. And also it can almost feel like an act of aggression. So if I say to you, I forgive you, you know, you're immediately going to become rather defensive and think, what the hell have I done? It can be a bit, you know, like me bestowing forgiveness on you. Nevertheless, you know, the way and I think that's all to do with history and expectation and association. Yeah. And everyone thinks it's to do with Christianity and rather, you know, just for the mentally strong or the morally superior, and it's got all sorts of negative. Nevertheless, I find it fascinating. Yeah. And I think it is a real powerful process of transformation. And my favourite quote, which isn't actually a definition, it's more a description, is attributed to the American writer Mark Twain, when he said, "Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it." And I like that because it shows that forgiveness grows out of damage. Some pain has to have occurred, something has to be heard. That it's messy, you know, this image of the violet all crushed under the heel. But also that from it comes this amazing fragrance, this healing balm. And I think in a way that's my favourite description of forgiveness. I think it's also really important to think that forgiveness, failing to have an angry, painful, emotional response to something. Yeah. It means feeling that pain, but not responding with vengeance.
It is the crushed field.
Yeah. And it means not being defined by what's hurt you and not being identified as the single thing that's your grievance.